Hello, everyone. This is Oscar Bradshaw from Krunch, and welcome to this week's Funsize film review, which is of Pixar's newest film, Turning Red. So this is directed by Domei Shi, and notably, it's the first female-directed Pixar film, which is a major milestone for Pixar. I was actually very surprised to learn that the previous 24 Pixar films had been directed by men only, but of course, it goes to show, unfortunately, the massively male-dominated profession that is film directing, and it's great to see finally the first female-directed Pixar film. So to get one thing out of the way first, Turning Red is visually mesmerizing. It proves once again that Pixar are definitely among the best at creating vibrant, colorful, and meticulously crafted worlds in CG animation. Each frame bursts with visual creativity, and combined with its lightning-fast pacing, it makes for a highly enjoyable experience. The cast is an all-Asian cast, which is, again, a big win. I'm saying this for the first time now, but it's a big win for Asian representation, definitely. It's a groundbreaking project, I would say, in Pixar's filmography. That said, although it does contain some very important positive messages, it comes up short a bit, I think, narratively, and especially when compared to the best of Pixar's filmography and also their previous Disney Plus releases. I'll get more into the Disney Plus release of this film later on. So it revolves around a character called Mei, played by Rosalie Chiang, who is a sort of goody two-shoes, super high-achieving person who does very good academically and all that. And she lives with her family. The parent here that gets the most screen time is the mother, Ming. The family runs a temple where they teach teach people about sort of their family's Chinese heritage. But so as Mei is moving on in life and growing up, she, as you would expect, starts to experience a number of changes. And these changes in Turning Red are represented by her transformation into a giant red panda. And the red panda represents her extreme emotions, whether that be sadness, anger, or excitement. Those are the most common ones explored. So I know what you may be thinking. This is immediately comparable to Inside Out, and yes, I would say it is. It does borrow quite a few elements in that regard from Inside Out. I wouldn't quite call it a ripoff. I wouldn't think. I don't think that's fair to say. I think it borrows some aspects from Inside Out, but it is very much its own original thing within Pixar's filmography. Apart from, of course, the portrayal again of another anthropomorphic animal, which it seems like that is. Well, that's just a common thing in American CG animation anyway. But regardless, it's a very enjoyable film in that the animation, the animation is mesmerizing, as I said. The voice acting is pretty great. Some very good voice performances, and it's a heartwarming and sweet film. The tone is very sweet. And those all make Turning Red ultimately, I think, worth watching. However, I will say that I do think the narrative follows, unfortunately, a bit of a formulaic and predictable story structure, kind of the typical Pixar formula, your usual kind of stuff. And it doesn't really do enough, to be honest, to subvert any of those conventions. There's a lot of cliches here. But one thing that is new and unlike other Pixar films, which is good to see, is an exploration of taboo subjects that in a more frank and honest way than you'd see in other Pixar productions, which is great to see from a company coming from. It's great to see coming from a company like Disney, which has not always, portrayed taboo subjects in the most, honest way previous to this. Another negative, I would say, unfortunately, is the character of Ming, Mei's mother. So I do completely get the sense that this character is supposed to be really, really irritating. But I think, to be honest, the character is sort of treated as a bit overly annoying. And unfortunately, we're not really given enough time once later in the film, I guess, slight spoiler here, we're shown why May's mother Ming is very overprotective, because of course, yes, that's the other thing. May lives under an overprotective sort of. May lives with a very overprotective mother, and we're not really given much of a reason why she's super overprotective until much later in the film. It's not until a moment very late on in the film that we sort of truly understand where May's mother is coming from, where Ming is coming from in terms of her parenting, and so I think more exploration of that character would have been good for just the overall emotional impact of the film. I also think the third act of the film, which is very large scale and action packed, escalates things a bit unnecessarily in my view. It's a bit of a unnecessary escalation of events where the film could have easily, I think, stayed at the same scale for the whole thing. The film also revolves around the ultimate quest, the ultimate goal of May and her friends, which is to visit which is to go to this concert from the band Four Town, which is like is presented as just your typical 2000s boy band. I found the setting of this film in the year 2002 quite interesting. I would surmise from that, I would imagine from that this is maybe a somewhat autobiographical, somewhat personal story for Domeishi, given the such specific time setting, Yeah. Other than that, yeah, the cast is pretty brilliant, I would say. Rosalie Chang, as I said, also featuring Sandra Oh, Ava Morse, Maitreyi Ramakrishnan, I hope I'm pronouncing that name right, sorry if I'm not, Hyein Park, Orion Lee, Wai Ching Ho, Tristan Alaric Chen, and James Hong. All great performances from the cast, all good stuff. And so, yeah, I wasn't personally a huge fan of the Four Town music that was presented in the film, which is interestingly enough, written by Billie Eilish and Phineas O'Connell, which I found interesting. It didn't really sound like much of their other music, but I digress. I guess I can't really say that with much authority since I do not regularly listen to Billie Eilish songs. But yeah, I'd still ultimately recommend Turning Red, but I think my impressions of the film, my opinion of the film, might have been clouded a bit by the fact that the previous day I watched Pixar's previous film, Luca, which I absolutely adored. I thought it was really, really brilliant, unbelievably sweet and heartwarming. A simple, small-scale story, coming-of-age story, taking place on this sort of beautifully animated in this beautifully animated Italian town. It's all really, really well done, I think. Luca is absolutely excellent. I had a huge smile on my face by the end of that film, and yeah, it's brilliant. I won't say too much about it so as not to spoil it, but I highly recommend checking that out as well as Turning Red. So Luca I enjoyed more than Turning Red. Soul, Turning Red isn't as good as Soul necessarily either. But as a film that is, as I said, the first female-directed Pixar film, and also the second film in Pixar's filmography to feature an Asian lead in its main cast, that's the first then since 2009's Up from Pete Docter. I think it's really unfortunate that this got a straight to Disney Plus release, and obviously, I'm sure many of you will have seen that the Pixar cast and crew, Pixar employees, are also very disheartened at Disney's decision to release Turning Red straight to Disney Plus. Now, obviously, this was a decision that Disney made in response to the Omicron variant of COVID spreading back in December. Or December or January, I think. I think that was when they made the choice to put it on Disney Plus. But given that Disney is putting out like all of their other films, any other film that they've put out recently, they have put out in cinemas at least for a while before taking it to Disney Plus. So I don't necessarily see why they couldn't have made a U-turn on that decision, especially with such a monumental film for firsts and for major milestones in Pixar history, not to be released in cinemas. Yeah, for that not to be released in cinemas is just very unfortunate, really. For people to experience it with that big screen experience. And so I certainly sympathize with the cast and crew of this film, who've worked so hard over it, and then who worked so hard on it, and were expecting a theatrical release, only to have it pulled away from them within the final months. It's really unfortunate, and I'm not really too happy with Disney for that. But regardless, it does seem to have been doing quite well on Disney Plus. So anyway, I would recommend checking out Turning Red, and Luca and Soul also, if you've not seen those films yet. Those are highly recommended also. But yeah, so I think this is ultimately about a 3.5 stars out of 5, or 7 out of 10 from me. I think that's about where I would place it on my rating scales. But yeah, so thank you all for listening to this Turning Red review. Check out this film if you want to, and Luca and Soul as well if you want to as well. I mean, Pixar's a great animation studio, but yeah, I do think Luca and Soul are standouts particularly, but Turning Red is quite good also. Yeah, so thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.